Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. And yes, I'm assuming you can hear me okay. How you doing today, One Feather?
I am doing marvelously. It's a day of respite from the sun. We've got cloudy skies all day today, and so it gives us a little of a sense of relief from that sun blaring down on us. So I assume things there in Utah are nice and sunny and bright.
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time in my cave, but yeah, it got pretty hot yesterday. I know it was reaching like 103 or something. Yeah,
That can be intense, but that again is something that we created. So you got to just grab it and run with it.
so as far as it goes to astrology, and which I know you do, the sun's considered a pretty good constant, right? Or do you like get into sun waves and stuff?
Well, the sun is, our source of identity. It's basically the construct of self that we created, and so the sun is always in the opposite sign of where your Earth is in your chart.
Okay.
So if your sun is in Pisces, like you and I, then our Earth is in Virgo, and our Earth sign tells us about our surroundings, our physical environment. And right now, Virgo is pretty clear. There's not a lot of activity going on there. So that to me would indicate we can kind of negotiate whatever comes along without a lot of angst.
It's funny when you think about the sun. Well, at least when I think about the sun, I get into this whole like, we assume that it's a nice glowing ball, but on like an alternate dimensional perspective at it, like it could be far more expansive in its experience or in its representation, and it just kind of looks like a ball. I mean, it's funny that we can't look straight at it, without things in the way or something, but just me with my naked eye, can't look straight at it. And, it almost feels like that's why a lot of people worshipped the sun, even as if it was God. And it's like that today, even the God being so undefinable, it, the sun is somewhat in that way. You can't really put your finger on it. You just have to like know it's there. You can't really look at it. You just know it's there. You feel its benefits. You feel the truth of it, and you almost see everything that it's not, and then what it is. So it's very symbolic to me. It's just amazing.
Yes, that's pretty much on point, although there is a whole subculture out there who do actually spend hours staring into the sun and walk away from the experience without any retinal damage. So the sun eaters, and it goes back as a tradition through Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt. We even find it up in the Indus Valley. I mean, you find pockets of these people who practice a form of communion with the sun because they believe the sun is a living entity. And so, the sun is the giver of life. And so it ends up sounding like, in many ways, the idea of looking at the force of life that emanates through us, that activates us and animates us. And so, yes, the happy sun is bouncing through the skies there. And this weekend, we'll have a happy moon bouncing around because it'll be a full moon in the sign of Capricorn. So you think you've been running into stubborn people for the last few weeks, wait until this weekend. That Capricorn vibe is like, get the hell out of my way. I am going to do what I want to do. So it should be an interesting weekend.
Yeah, I'm starting to face the stubbornness of a 2-year-old, and he is definitely challenging me as of the last 2 days. But he also had his cousin come over for 5 minutes, and in that 5 minutes, there was a bite on the neck that he received, and it literally looks like a vampire bite. It's hilarious. That and that's what was going on during my program. I was doing Ho'oponopono yesterday, and uh, he's getting bit. He's all coming back. And then, so he was distraught from that. And now it's almost as if daddy's not good enough. And I don't know what it is, but I've never been challenged by a 2-year-old so much. I don't, it's hard to explain, too. It's not like he's, puffing his chest and want to beat the crap out of me or anything, but it's like, I can feel like we already set kind of a routine of life and everything. So it's a whole new thing for me that I have to. I just got into this rut almost of way of thinking and dealing with him and in life, and now it's all throwing up in the air, and I have to deal with being tired, and when he's happy, the baby's crying, and when the baby's so I'm being tossed around all over the place. It is crazy over here. Oh.
Well, and Atreyu is a little Gemini, so he is going to want to express himself. Gemini is a sign of expression. Some of the more challenging sides of the Gemini personality we see magnified in our current president, who is a Gemini also. So you definitely want to nip those in the bud and redirect those attitudes about self back to a more benign and loving sense of self, because Geminis are, they're pretty powerful sign. They are very good communicators, and they often are very enchanting. They can mesmerize people. So you definitely want to notice that and make him responsible for the impact he has on the circle of friends and family around him.
Okay. Yeah. We're learning, I can't really say that I have any idea what I'm doing. But that's why I'm doing it. It really is not a common knowledge thing for me, even though I've always loved children, and even before I had kids, even as a Treyu, I have 30 nieces and nephews, and I think it's reached 35 now. So I've had my time with kids, but nothing like the full-time dad thing. It's a totally different subject.
It's fun though. It's like having one of those rodeo experiences where you're on the bucking bronco and they open the gate. It's like, yeehaw, let's see where we can take this, and let's see how much fun we can have doing this. So
it is kind of about having fun, that's for sure. It is, you come to that state of peace of mind. You feel like you can be peaceful in any situation, and then all of a sudden, let's mix it up, and so things start going up and down again, and so I'm sure, and my mind really is like how to deal with this situation being completely new. It's still the same old stuff, still the same thing, just kind of mixed up in a different fashion. It's like, I feel like I'm going through boot camp, and not being able to sleep, and not have and still wanting to do things like this program with you and the programs I have throughout the week, and working with people, coaching and everything. Is I can't just stop it all, and just you have to push through it, and it is beautiful. It is really beautiful. When I can see the love, it is beautiful. But when I'm really tired and I'm just like, lay down, you're supposed to be sleeping because I need sleep. you think you can think, but I feel like you can almost feel that only like the primal part of your brain is just awake, just trying to survive, and the rest of your brain is trying to fall asleep or is asleep. You can't. There's no logic at that time, you know. It's shut up and sleep.
Well, that's again, it's all a phase, and you know, the thing is, working on that discipline around the idea of letting go of yesterday and letting go of an hour ago, and really bringing yourself back into being in the moment. Because when you wake the baby up, or when the baby wakes you up, if you're referencing what happened, you know, at 3 in the morning or at noon yesterday, there is that window of opportunity that you create to repeat the past. And so one of the things that I think is very important for parenting is to always try to stay as much as possible in the present moment, because, you know, while you do have to remember certain things that are going on, you really have to be willing to release the past in a very lucid way, so that you are not attaching the past to the people around you.
Yeah, you know, it kind of needs to work in the other way as well, because you know, as I can see that he should know kind of passes through my mind, and that's like a reason and an excuse to be upset about it. Like, you know this, and I should now get scary because you're breaking something that you know should be happening, or a rule that's set, or and so, you know, it's definitely an excuse to get upset or whatever. And so, like, being in this moment, there's none of those, you know, there's no this is how it should be kind of a thing. And but at the same time, you know, I almost need to forget that he's learned anything, and just recognize that in this moment there really is innocence, and you don't really know what to do. Nobody knows what to do. I mean, I keep saying this is the first time I've done this and gone through these things, as if it's, you know, my excuse as well. He's never done anything like this before. You know, I got to remember that even through his eyes, I mean, he's never done anything challenging like this before. It's the same. It's it's a totally new thing. But I've done similar things, so I you know, I got the upper hand, a better perspective. I should be, you know, the one teaching him to be calm in the situation. So I feel like I've just gone down, not really in, you know, actually scale or anything, but on the roller coaster. You know, I'm in the midair right now, throwing my arms up like, ah, you know, that have my arms up. I want to put them down. I want to hold that railing because it's kind of scary. But you know, so it's gonna go back up again. You know, it's gonna level out. It's gonna be good.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
it's going to be
it's
fun.
going to be fun.
And that's a heck of an echo I'm picking up there for a second. Anyway, but somehow within all of this, the certain thing kind of crept up in my mind's eye as we were dialoguing here, and that was from the Course in Miracles, the process of psychotherapy. And when they talk about the process of illness, it says, as all therapy is psychotherapy, so all illness is mental illness. It is a judgment on the Son of God, and judgment is a mental activity. Judgment is a decision made again and again against creation and its creator. It is a delusion. It is a decision to perceive the universe as you would have created it. It is a decision that truth can lie and must be lies. What then can illness be except an expression of sorrow and guilt? And who could weep but for his innocence? And that goes back to the idea of innocence again, and how all of this even though it seems very tangible, you know, every time Atreyu throws his bottle across the room at you and takes a dump in his diapers, it seems very, very real. But the real truth is that this is all a video game that you're playing inside your mind. And in many ways, you have to recognize that this can change because I can change my thinking about this.
Yeah, yeah. You have to. It is very easy to actually believe that, you know, not just that the world is real, but that I'm real. You know, it's so easy to believe that, you know, I'm actually doing this. I'm actually getting upset. Oh, I actually need to correct myself. I actually need to fix this thing. You know, as much as, you know, thinking he's actually doing this. He's actually challenging me. He's actually being this, you know, toddler. You know, it's it's how he's supposed to be. So it's definitely easy to 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 believe that not just, you know, the whole generic thing, the whole world is real or not real. I mean, it's but it, you know, I'm not actually doing me. Like, I'm not actually doing this upset when it's happening. I'm not actually doing this happiness when it's happening. I'm not actually doing this, you know, talking when it's happening. And but it's so easy to really get enveloped in it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's a process of learning about yourself through your child, and that's one of the amazing processes of life in general, is that we can learn a lot about our illusory self, our ego self, by observing our parents. But then when the role is shifted, all of a sudden, you know, you're looking at your son or your daughter and you're going, wow. I remember when I was this age, was I doing this? And if I was, what was the, you know, what was the resources my parents used to confront it? So that old saying, child is father to the man, is a very powerful saying, because we really are watching ourselves through multiple generations, through multiple timelines, and that's where the real excitement comes in.
Yeah. And how much I would absolutely love to have a complete peaceful house, a peaceful situation, dealings with him. I think of times when things do get peaceful, and I honestly do think of getting bored as well. And you know, this is part of the ride. I think I prefer roller coasters over sitting in the park. And, you know, they both have their beauty about them, but it is, you got to remember, it is a ride. You know, it has an enjoyment factor that sitting in the park doesn't. You know, but that's, you know, has its time and place, just like the roller coaster does. And so you gotta allow it to happen and get out of it the best results you can. Just keep, you know, trying to be whatever it is, that the best of whatever it is. I wouldn't say the best person you can be, but the best son of God you can be. And, you know, that's really all you can come out with. It's, yeah, I mean, you could just not try too, but, you know, that's also coming out with the best you can be.
Right. Well, how does he travel? Is he pretty good at, you know, just conking out the minute you put him in the car and start to drive off, or is he pretty wired when you're moving him around and putting him in new environments?
He does like driving. He does tend to sleep in the car, but not as much anymore. Now he's just looking out the window, and he does pretty good in the car, actually. Yeah.
That's really cool. So before long, you'll be able to start taking him on hikes and other outdoor activities, and really sharing, you know, a bigger, more expanded sense of a universe that he can inhabit.
Yeah, I was really thinking about that. Then I'm at the challenge of the infant as well. But I can carry that little guy with a backpack and stuff. So that inspires something in me. But then I think of the heat again. It's like the mind, just everything could be an issue. And well, as far as I think I have a difficulty traveling more than they do. I like juggling to these two children. He wants to run all over the place. We go to the park. He's on the other side of the park in like 5 seconds. I'm over there. Oh, daddy's over here. He's coming back to the other side. He's just all over the place and energetic. I remember being very energetic and just like in the memories. I just remember everything just flying by. I mean, bouncing off walls, going so fast.
Well, and how is that working out as far as starting him off with his ABCs and his numbers? Are you actually pursuing that yet, or is that still something that you're looking to the future to start addressing those things?
Yeah, well, he really likes Elmo, and part of it is because he does learn from it. And yeah, we're we're in the animal books, and he's starting to know where to find the whale, where to find the giraffe, what's an elephant. He says elephant's so cute. It's a new one. He's like elephant. It's just hilarious. I got a little recording of it on the post, but yeah, not so much officially into the ABCs. He is counting because when you count to 3, that's when daddy picks you up and swings you around. So he learned to count to 3 so he can experience that. So he's getting there. He very knowledgeable. I see that some days he is very smart and everything, as well as some days he's out of it just like I am. So it's a whole new mix of experiences. We got salad going on over here. You never know what it's going to taste like.
Yeah, it sounds like overall it's kind of a beautiful life in a lot of ways.
It is.
And you can go out early in the morning, get them up, and take a ride out in the wilderness, do a little hiking right at sunrise before it really gets that hot. And that's a beautiful time of day because the world is waking up, and you've got all these different critters that are starting to get out and move around. So that might be your summer ploy.
It's a good idea, and I think he just woke up and realized I was on a program. That's all good. Yeah, I think I'm really going to take that into more consideration and actually try to get out more. Yeah, now it's like my mind works in an old fashion that no, let's just stay in the cave. It's too cold in the winter. It's too hot in the summer. Let's just we get out at least once a day, but it's different, to the store or to the park or things like that. But yeah, I think really getting into the wilderness and the woods, and I can't wait until he is really logical in a fashion of comprehension, like because that's just like what I love. I love talking about the deep, rules of the universe and how it all works, and to be able to teach him that. So now it's like in an example state, and I feel like as of yesterday the example has been getting mad. So I hope he's learning more about my peacefulness than about my temporary, state of anger that occasionally comes up.
I'm sure he is. It's not like this was just a random thing thrown together. There was some sort of a contract. He chose you as much as you chose him. So yeah. I think he had kind of a sense of, this is going to be an interesting adventure, and maybe we can really not only have some fun, but leave a lasting impression in the space-time continuum that helps resolve space and time.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I was having visitations from what was a child, and I honestly do believe it was Atreyu before he got a body, and that he was insisting that, come on, let's find a mom, let's get this going, and having dreams, and I would see in the corner of my eye this tiny little kid, and it dawned on me when I found to talk to Trina again. I was like, oh duh, yeah, she's perfect, and we started our relationship from there. And I definitely feel like he's like it was there, and even spiritually, and it would be so much easier if we could remember this stuff. It'd be so much easier just to, when you're in the moment, just remember that in a helpful fashion, that this is arranged, you wanted to do this, but that includes the whole forgetting of it. That's what's so fun about it, is that we don't know, we don't remember, and so you don't even know who you are. You're just gonna find out whatever's gonna happen. And talking about roller coaster, right?
Well, now, how was Trina affected by becoming pregnant and ultimately bringing forth a Atreyu? Is it just a very physical, practical journey for her, or is she having a lot of spiritual awakenings and shifts of consciousness and that sort of thing also?
Yeah, I would say it's mostly a physical thing for her, and it's not her first time around. This is Atreyu is actually her sixth baby, and Link is the seventh. So she, as far as what I've seen, and if I'm in the moment, then she's a certain way. But as far as scaling, like if we did keep track, I could see that as we often have talks, that she has her thinking has changed in a fashion several times of being able to approach this differently, and she does approach differently. It's not as directly as myself, that it is kind of almost as if her personality naturally starts to manifest itself differently, and I'm more like, let's get this manifesting differently. Let's change myself. I want to change the world, whatever. And she's kind of just this like nice little cloud that changes with the wind.
Yeah, that's actually a beautiful analogy, the whole idea of being kind of a celestial being and just allowing herself to be moved by intuition and those other interior forces, the winds of change that come from inside that deeper level of consciousness. So I would say that both boys are going to be having some amazing adventures as they continue to advance here, because the two of you are at a point in your lives where you're more settled, where there's less chaos and less concern.
Yeah, it's gonna be nice when it's not all over the place, and we can actually like sit down and discuss things, or just enjoy the same game instead of being all over the place, and things like that. We sometimes enjoy the same show. Sometimes he gets really enjoying a program, but usually it's the same one over and over and over and over again. It's like it's freaking adorable, but it just drives you nuts.
Yeah, that's again the nature of our world we have created, is a repetition of patterns and energy flows and ideas and thoughts, and all of it is based in that flipping back to that idea of psychotherapy. It's all based in our wanting to have a world apart from God, our wanting to have created a life that, is our pride and joy, is the crown of creation. And unfortunately, a lot of times we really have no idea as to how complex the plot becomes and how we have to really monitor our thinking and start weeding out these weeds of, self-rejections, self-humiliation, self-criticism, all those items that come up and have to be reviewed.
Yeah, it is definitely up for review, having this just a whole new way, a whole new experience to bring up things that I've, ignored. Of course, even like just the whole idea of patience, for an example. Like, you think you know what patience is, and I remember thinking, yeah, I have no problem waiting to be picked up, or waiting for a ride, or waiting for this, waiting. And then patience is like a whole nother thing than the waiting idea of patience. This having this training for this slow to anger, I like to express it as, so like, if you're quick to anger about it, it's usually, in my mind, because I think they know, I think they should know, I think they, all this stuff. So it is in my mind, there's these redundant thinking and believing that naturally starts bringing up the same response. And it's almost as if, because I'm aware of my mind, I'm recognizing that, I keep thinking like, oh, he should know, or this is driving me nuts. Hey, bud. Oh, he's got his book. Okay. He's got to get his animal book. He likes animals. He does love learning. I have to be responsible. Yeah, he doesn't know, and it's easy to forget that. And going into my beliefs and my thoughts and recognizing that, that's one thing about, I actually carry a staff with me everywhere I go. And, one thing about it is a reminder, a constant reminder that things aren't what they seem. And that, you got to think of this in a spiritual perspective in order to understand it. Like a physical perspective, the staff is completely meaningless and a waste of space and time, and all this stuff. It's like, no, that's not practical to keep a stick with you, and it's not even for walking and all this stuff. And the mind, like, no, you can only take it on a plane if you actually need it for walking, kind of an idea. It's like, no, I'm more mentally handicapped. I need it for spiritual perspective. Like, I forget about spirituality, so I have this constant reminder that God walks with me everywhere I go.
Yes, and that if you do stumble, you've got something that will help you rectify the situation. Your gyroscope is attached to your walking staff, and it keeps you upright and somewhat steady. But the thing about the little ones and patience, a lot of people, I think, imagine that patience is this process of suppression. I've got to push down my anxiety. I've got to push down my desire to mobilize things, make changes, force things to happen. And patience really isn't that. Patience is an interesting thing, because you have to look at it like two cars that are connected in a train. And the first car up here is not patience. That first car is acceptance. And if you get into a space of acceptance, so this is, something that's real, and I have created it, and I have to work my way through it. And then all of a sudden that leaks and gives you the second car, which is patience. So you have to have acceptance in order to have patience. And in order to have patience, you have to be willing to be responsible for the world that you are experiencing. So again, we go down to that deeper thought of, am I a victim? And if you're wanting to take on that victim role, having a 2-year-old and a three-month-old is definitely going to make that very shrill for you.
Yeah, it's true. Oh man. Yeah, it's so easy to forget. But that's the point, you know, I wouldn't have this exposure of these beliefs and actually believing I'm a victim of children and if I didn't really get into it, you know, if I never let it happen, you know, let's say I really was a real true master that applied it every second all the time and I never got involved, then I wouldn't, you know, be aware that it's an actual belief that I'm using to build my reality, you know. So the whole, you know, then reality wouldn't be there for that, and because it's coming from it, you know, it's like a part of it, it's one and the same. And so, you know, at the same time, you know, being one and the same, I do want to have the kids, you know, I do want to have this life, I do want to, I deliberately chose to do this, and you know, to accept that, you know, I got to remember that it's the whole package. It's not about having children, it's about having little egos that will grow up to be big egos and adults, and giving, you know, their perspective of life and doing what they do with life and whatever they're divinely written in the script to do. And so, you know, it's a pretty big commitment, to say the least.
Yeah, it is kind of engrossing and consuming, but exciting, thrilling often, and ultimately just a way of getting through the space-time journey so that we can get all of this stuff sorted out, resolved, and get back to a place of dwelling in eternal harmony with all of our children and our children's children, and ad infinitum. And that's what I like about A Course in Miracles. We're in this realm, we're so looped into and blocked out by the whole linear time thing and the ideas of separation. But you know, if you go back to that original point in time where God decided to become a creator, and by extending himself or itself through all space and time, through, you know, infinity, and in infinitude, and then us repeating that, it's mind-boggling to contemplate how we are creating our own children the way that God created his child, and it becomes such a thing that is so uncontainable that this whole realm of you know, isolated incidents, isolated phenomenon, isolated objects really dissolves. I mean, it just has no usefulness when you think about how eternity is so open and so unhampered. And so it does make it an interesting thing to look at your little one there and his fingers trying to reach out and grasp objects, and then knowing that within the truth of that child, your extension of your love, there are no fingers. That child knows that everything is within itself. How about that?
Yeah, it's really fascinating to think about. I know that like creating as the Father created, it was well misunderstood in the religion that I was raised in, and that thinking that, oh, that's because God's a body as well, and the way we make children is through bodies, and of bodies giving birth to bodies, and it's remarkable to recognize that you know, you're not actually separate from your creations, and that even though it's happening seemingly of separate perspective, it's still, even as as God's perspective, creating the sun, knows the sun as himself. I mean, that's that whole unity. It's like literally itself. And to think that of Atreyu, that he is literally a fresh new perspective, a new expression of myself, and that he has, and even as me being of my father, like I'm literally a combination of my mother and father, and a whole nother, the way, the perspective I have and the world that I have. And then to recognize that that's this representation of just the reflecting pool, back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth, going from, God the Father, God the Son, 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 the Father, body, or the Father soul to the sister soul, the Father sister, the Father, I don't know how to explain, and then going to the Father body, Son body, Father body, Son body, and it's like still the same thing, but it's been like, built on this, that's through generations. What are we, what am I, coming off, starting fresh, and having a whole nother perspective of that separation. Atreyu is going to be adding this whole nother perspective, which he is, to the universe, that's never been around before. It's like the universe is saying, well, I've never done Devin before, I've never done Atreyu before, and this is a whole new thing. I've done very similar things, people and stuff, so it's somewhat predictable, but at the same time, you're rolling that die, and it's just, you never know what's going to come up.
Yes, and that's why it's good to have a staff handy, so you can lean on it when the magnitude of all of this suddenly occurs to you. It's like, holy Toledo, I used to think in such small terms, in such small ways. And I think that's a beautiful part of what A Course in Miracles does introduce to our thinking, is that recognition that, the life that we thought was so fabulous and so astonishing, or so overwhelming, or so limiting, it was beyond just being restricted. It was less than a grain of sand on the beach, and that's the incentive to let go of the person, Chris or Devin or Atreyu or whoever, to step out of that person as often as we can, so we can re-experience infinitude. We can get back into a space where we realize that we are so far more magnificent than anything that we could imagine in this realm of limitation, that becomes very compelling then. That's why we want our spiritual practice. We need our spiritual practices, because we love sliding into that state of lack of limitation.
Yeah, regardless if anybody recognizes that it's actually a spiritual perspective or not. Like, even those who insist that it's not real and that it's not necessary still have their, escape tactics and their way of trying to find peace. They still want to be peaceful, and that's really kind of the idea of it. Most people are rejecting religion because they no longer find it a way of acceptance and peace. Like, instead of it's based off of fear and hate, and oh no, it doesn't make any sense, God being that way or anything. So even at the same time, that pursuit of finding peace and happiness is, everybody's reason to do anything. Like, oh no, that's not resonating with me or whatever. Is you're still having that calling, that desire for that peace and happiness, and that's the real spirituality. That call to find the truth in order to find a state of peace. And some people find it through the fancy words of spiritual practice, and some people find it through the fancy words of science, and saying God's not real, and that's a sense of relief in that idea, because they think of God often as someone that's going to smack you if you have premarital sex or something and condemn you forever and all this stuff, and that it's not about love. So you can almost see that it's actually, they want a better idea that's more loving and more peaceful and more happy. And so it's really the same thing. It's not really about the symbols and the terms, but that it's all about this striving, this happiness, finding peace. And you see it everywhere, that everybody wants that. That's something innate in us, that we have this, drive to find that happiness, to find that peace, and to maintain it.
Yes, and that's where it becomes a bipolar experience, because the ego is committed to not ever allowing that to happen. So you've got part of you that wants peace, and the other part of you that is desperately trying to avoid that at all costs. And that really is a synopsis of life on a small planet in this remote corner of the universe. And that's, again, a thing that the more we resist it, the more we strive for it. It's like I see all these people out here who want to fight for peace, and let's go bomb somebody on the other side of the planet, and that'll give everybody peace. And that's the ego's answer. That's the way that that darker side of our soul is trying to accomplish an agenda that is completely unachievable, because really at the bottom of all that, the ego's agenda is the only way there can be peace is if I eliminate everybody else in the universe that exists, and then here all by myself, then I'll be at peace. And that's really kind of scary.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't make any sense as far as even from this physical perspective. And, I think of Krishna and Arjun and his conversation in the Bhagavad Gita, and how Arjun's kind of freaking out, realizing that he's about to go to war with his family and his friends and his loved ones on the other side, as well as, who he has on his side that are going to be dying as well. And Krishna's just has this totally different perspective, completely being the full knowledge of this divine being. And he looks at the situation totally different, saying how, it doesn't really matter. This doesn't really matter. Death isn't real. This war isn't real. This is just kind of something we're doing. And it's just comforting to recognize that it's so easy to get it caught up in thinking, it's about being positive and not being negative, and you have this war going on in your head, and of good and bad and good and bad, and at the same time, if you did recognize that divine perspective, even that war going on in your mind really doesn't matter, and that peace is, and say the peace of God is a whole nother state that has nothing to do with balancing the good and bad, but that recognizing that the good and bad isn't what is worth, pointing out, what isn't worth having the experience. It's not like, to stop the war. Like Krishna's perspective is, no, just go ahead and do it because it's something you're doing. It's not really a big deal to get caught up in it, thinking that it's you. Just stay above the battleground while the war is happening or not happening, and just enjoy the ride, enjoy the game, enjoy the roller coaster.
Yes, but then that always comes back down to the other side of the coin, where we witness the suffering going on around us, and that's where it's very hard to draw ourselves up and above the fray, because it does appear to be very real. And once the tears of children and elderly and just humans in general are hitting the soil in front of you and creating that mud hole that that we all seem to be wallowing around in, it takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of attention. to be able to surrender to the truth and to rise to a higher level of looking at all this. Because the beauty is that God or the Holy Spirit or Christ is always there to pick you up. You know, it's not like you're going to have to wallow in all of this sorrow forever. But you do have to be willing to let go of it. And that's the hard thing that we're stuck with, is that we hold on to it with this incredibly bitter sort of attitude. There is a bitterness that comes through in all of our travail.
Yeah, and you know, like that's, yeah. And the suffering is like a whole nother battle in itself. And just thinking how it's a big, you know, it really happens. I mean, we know, for like, you see someone in pain, I relate that to my pain that I felt, and you know, that was very real in my experience. It all seemed very, very real, and it's very intense. And so it's so easy and natural for this perspective to, you know, think that that's worth doing something as well. You know, it's constant to say, go into this idea where I need do nothing according to A Course in Miracles is not referring to, and that's where we get into level confusion. It's not referring to Devon, let's say, as much as it's referring to the Christ. And the Christ keeps thinking, you know, it actually is Devon, so it gets a little confusing. It gets okay, you talk, I can't talk. Need a drink.
Well, you're out there in that western area, so you got to make sure you got a bottle of water handy. But yes, it is a thing where we do get all these different levels of identity confused and confrontational, because there's always the inner struggle, the inner battle. We've got the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. We've got the hidden agendas. We've got the conscious agendas. And so it just keeps us engaged over and over and over again. We're involved in all of these different threads, and yet all of them have one source. And that's what we keep forgetting, is that we are the source of all this stuff. And that's what we have to drag ourselves back to over and over again, and look at it from that perspective of, this is something that I created, and I can uncreate it by releasing it, handing it over to the Holy Spirit, handing it over to God.
Yeah. It's like that idea. That's beautiful. Yeah. With oh, now I forget what I was gonna say. They're trying to keep me from sharing the secrets. Don't give away the secrets of the universe. That's
yes, that's the alien influence. Obviously, in the future, you'll have to wear broadcasts, or you have to wear, you know, one of those aluminum helmets. You can get some aluminum foil and wrap your head, so that the alien influence is not affecting you, so that you can give away the secrets. That would be the beauty of it.
Yeah. I just might do that, actually.
Well, you know, it's most effective if you have a pair of those Mickey Mouse ears to add to it. That really enhances your skull cap made out of Reynolds aluminum. It all comes together in a fashion statement that's quite remarkable.
Oh man, it's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. You know, it's like the need do nothing is applied to A Course in Miracles. I mean, applied to the Christ. You know, it's so easy to get caught up. Once you find peace in your life in this situation, you know, then it's got to be something new. It's got to be a different way to get you out of peace. You know, like you were saying, trying to engage you. It's trying to keep you here. It's got to make things dramatic all the time, so that no, stay engaged. I need you to exist. You know, I need you to believe in this world so I can exist, so I can be here. If you leave, then I no longer exist anymore. And it's like this actual being made out of fear, like a manifestation of the fear. If the Son of God doesn't believe in me, then I'm not here anymore. So I need to like keep mixing things up, keep changing things around so that it, he at least believes. It doesn't matter if it believing that this situation's negative or positive, just believe in me. It's like this desperate, very desperate, trying to just attempt to, come on, just, I want to exist, keep me around, please. It's fighting for its life. It's a very serious game. Yeah.
And that's I always think of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. It's just we look at the grass that's grown knee high in the midst of summer, and then along comes the drought, and all of a sudden the grass dries up, and the winds of change come along over the course of autumn, and then winter buries it in snow, and by next spring there's really not much left. And that really is all of our lives, all of these leaves that have fallen from a tree and got caught up on a creek that led to a river that led to an ocean. So the only way out, the only answer is to just relax and enjoy the ride back to the ocean.
And stare at the sun.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I have a few friends actually who are sun eaters, and they get out there and spend time. I have one friend who goes to Egypt regularly, at least once a year, to spend time out in the desert staring at the sun. And he believes that he has, well, he does. He obviously does have ongoing conversations with the sun, because for him the sun is an entity. And so, recognizing consciousness in the sun and then communicating with it really is kind of a brave adventure, I would say. So I think
of Teletubbies and the little sun turning around and its little baby face.
Yeah.
My parents are more intelligent than that.
Unfortunately for me, I've never seen any of the Teletubby things. So
okay.
It's a non sequitur, but nonetheless, it's the noon hour, so we probably need to wind it down and get the hell out of here so Lynn can move forward.
Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for being here. I enjoy this conversation. Thank you very much, One Feather.
Absolutely. It was awesome. And I'll see you in a week. We'll pick it up.